Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, you learn about AWS services. Today I'm going to talk about what are different methods available to build ETL pipeline using Glue. And this is one of those tutorials where I don't have any lab or demo in the end, but I'm going to basically compare and discuss different design options for building ETL pipeline using AWS Glue. So let's get started. Before we go into choices of building the pipelines, let's see how does a typical ETL pipeline look like. So let's take example. Suppose you have got some kind of JDBC data source from where you write a AWS Glue job to fetch the data into your data platform, and that data you store into S3, and you say, since I'm fetching it from my source system, I will call it a raw data. And the moment you fetch your data into the raw part of the data platform, you run a Glue crawler to catalog your data, so that the moment data lands into your data platform, it is cataloged. And cataloging is, again, I have talked it many times, but cataloging is very important because that's how your data becomes searchable, discoverable. And once your data has been put into the raw part of the data platform, then you run another Glue job which can actually transform your data into cleansed data. And you can do various types of transformation to cleanse data, things like you can fill in the missing values, you can convert your data into standard format. So for instance, sometimes people receive data in CSV, XML, JSON, but what they want to do is that they want to, for instance, standardize that data format into Parquet format. That's a good example of cleansing. Then people also standardized on date time formats and also on the currencies. So those kind of tasks you can also do into cleansing. You can also do sometime column name renaming as a part of the cleansing. But whatever you do for the cleansing, once your data has been cleansed and put into the cleansed part of the data platform, say in Amazon S3, then you run another set of AWS Glue crawler, and these crawlers will simply catalog your cleansed data. So your cleansed data is also discoverable, is also searchable. And post your data has been cleansed, then you can run some other kind of Glue job which actually converts your data into a curated data. Now, curated data has many other names. For instance, you can call it harmonized data. You can also call it consumable data. Essentially, this is the data where you are converting your data into a format, into an aggregation, into some kind of calculation, which can then be used for business purpose. So any kind of machine learning, any kind of reporting use cases you run on the curated or consumable data. And the moment you convert, again, the same way data into curated data, you run another set of Glue crawler to catalog that part of the data as well. So that entire data from raw to cleansed to curated is properly cataloged into a data platform, and users can search the data they want to see. So this is how a typical ETL pipeline look like, and you can see that it's using a set of crawlers and a set of Glue job and data storage. They have to run in a certain sequence, in a certain workflow, in order to complete all the way from source data to the curated data journey. And that's why I'm calling it a pipeline, and people call it pipeline actually. And when you are building a data platform, you will build many such pipelines depending on from how many data sources you are bringing your data, in how many different curated sets you are creating, and so on and so forth. So essentially you will have multiple such pipelines when you are building your data platform. And then the question comes that how do I build this data pipeline? Right? Because it's not about writing just a glue job and crawler and then getting the things done. This whole thing has to work in an automated fashion. This whole thing has to work as a workflow. So what method, what techniques I can use to create this workflow, this pipeline, which can work in an automated fashion to give you end-to-end data flow all the way from source to the curated stage. And that's what I'm going to discuss today. So there are many methods you can use to build such pipelines, and I'm primarily going to discuss 3 methods. All 3 are AWS Cloud native methods. And I'm not saying that these 3 are the only methods. I mean, there could be some other combinations, other methods which can come together, but these 3 I see as the most popular or most used methods when building the pipeline in AWS using Glue crawlers and Glue job. So the method is, one is you can create an event-based framework where you use services like DynamoDB, CloudWatch events, S3 events, Lambda functions. They all come together and they make an event-based framework. You can also use Glue workflow for creating such pipelines. You can also use step functions for creating such pipeline. So these 3 methods I'm going to discuss today. And again, let me be very clear. These 3 are not the only methods. Like for instance, you can use Apache Airflow, which is provided as a managed service on AWS. You can also use some AWS partner solutions to build such pipeline. But today I'm going to focus on these 3 methods only. All 3 are cloud native methods for AWS. So when we discuss all these 3 pipeline and try to understand their pros and cons and like how exactly they work and what is good and what is not so good, there are certain review points on which we will kind of assess all three methods. So all 3 methods will be assessed on certain review points so that you kind of get a perspective about how exactly how you can kind of do an apple-to-apple comparison, so to say. Yeah. So the review points which I'm going to consider, and again this is based on some of my experiences working with different customers. I have tried to select few points which are mostly discussed or mostly debated upon when you are trying to choose a method for building the pipeline. And these are the 5 points I'm going to consider. So first one is reusability. And reusability is very important because when you are building a data platform, like sometimes people write 100 pipelines or 1,000 pipelines or things like that. I mean, depending on how big the data platform is, from how many data sources you are bringing the data, your platform could be very big. And reusability really helps here because if you are building a platform which is reusable, then it can really reduce your development effort. And it can also, it can also make the solution, it's more of creating a decoupled solution which is reusable. I mean, that's the essence, so that it's maintainable and your development effort is not very high. The second one is observability. You are building a data platform, you need to know what's going on the data platform, how many pipelines are successfully completing, how many failing, why they are failing, how they are performing, what time they take to finish. You need to know those kind of parameters, those kind of monitoring. So observability is very important in order to assess the health of your data platform and various pipelines running under that. Third one is development effort. I mean, there are 100 ways you can build a pipeline, but if some way cost you too much in terms of development, then the platform does not remain a viable platform to develop and maintain. So what kind of development effort required for these 3 different pipelines we try to build. We'll try to assess that. Then we will also talk about integration with AWS services. Though in the pipeline you saw we have mostly like glue jobs and crawlers and catalogs and S3 as a storage. Probably we can have some other storage. Yeah, those are the core components of your pipeline, but people do use other services. So for instance, the moment your curated data is created, you might want to send a notification to the end user that your curated data is ready. Similarly, there could be some other integration required with some other AWS services. So how easy it is to integrate with other AWS services, that's also affects your decision to choose a pipeline. And again, it depends use case to use case. Sometimes you just want to run a raw pipeline, like I showed you examples. Sometimes you want to add certain set of notifications and alerting and those kind of things. Then it needs integration with other AWS services, and it becomes very important to understand which method provides a better way of integrating with other AWS services. And finally, what development environment, what development tool you can use for building such pipeline. That's also a very important factor one should consider. So these are the five points I am going to use today to assess the 3 pipelines. So let's get started. Okay. So first method, which is event-based framework. So suppose the way it works is that suppose this is your pipeline. Okay, this is your example pipeline, and then what you do here that you say fine, I have my source glue job which is responsible for bringing data from my source system to raw. Let me schedule that job. I'm just giving an example with schedule. You schedule that job, then your data comes to S3 bucket. At that point of time, an S3 event is raised, which is going to call a Lambda function, and that Lambda function will simply start the glue crawler. So your glue job is running on schedule. It's taking the data from JDBC endpoint and then putting it into the S3 bucket in the raw area. Then an S3 event is using a Lambda function to start a glue crawler, and then the data is cataloged. The moment you glue crawler finish the job, it actually raises one CloudWatch event saying that, hey, I'm done. My crawler has finished the job. And on that event, we launch another Lambda function, which will start the next glue job, which is responsible for then converting your raw data into the cleansed data. And then the same process continue. The moment data has been created into the S3 bucket in the cleans area, one Lambda function and S3 event is used to start the next set of crawler or crawlers which are responsible for cataloging the cleans data. And when this crawler ends, it again raises a CloudWatch event, which then uses the Lambda function to run another set of glue jobs, which are responsible for converting your data from cleansed data to curated data. And then again, the same way, the moment the data is created into this curated area of the S3 bucket, we raise another S3 event or Lambda function, which will simply go and create run another set of glue crawler, which are responsible for creating which is responsible for cataloging the curated data. So you can see that this is an event-based framework because events are used to orchestrate different set of glue jobs and crawlers in a certain sequence to complete the pipeline. Now this is a fantastic approach, and don't think it as in a hard coding. So it's not that this Lambda function has this glue job hard coded, or this Lambda function has got this Lambda function has got this glue crawler hard coded, or this Lambda function has got this glue job hard coded. Actually, what people do that people maintain this kind of execution metadata and configuration, say in a DynamoDB table, so that things are the whole, like for instance, when this event is raised, which lambda function will call which glue crawler. That is not hard coded, that is put into this DynamoDB configuration, and this lambda function will simply pick the information from DynamoDB configuration to run the crawler. And similarly, when this lambda function is executed, which glue job to start after completion of this glue crawler, that information is not also hard coded, that's also into this DynamoDB table, and it simply fetches that information and start the glue job. So nothing is hard coded here, but the whole mechanism works based on event, and in what sequence the lambda functions will start the crawler and glue job, and what configurations around that is all put into this DynamoDB table, so that there is no hard coding into your code. So that's how event-based framework works, which I have seen many customers using it. Okay. So having understood how this event-based framework works, let's talk about how this method is faring against different review points. So let's think from the reusability point of view. Now, this method, really, you can create a very reusable framework. As you can see here, there are certain set of lambda functions which are creating the running the crawler. There are certain set of lambda functions which are starting the glue job. You can create a generic lambda function. You can create generic glue jobs. Retracking back. So you can create certain reusable lambda function to start the crawler. You can create a lambda function reusable to start the glue job, taking the parameters from the configuration. So literally, you can create a very reusable framework where it's very easy to onboard a new pipeline. If you're trying to onboard a new pipeline, simply create some more glue jobs, some more crawlers, and then put that workflow configuration into this DynamoDB table, and voila, your things are working. So literally, you can really create a very nice reusable framework when you're using an event-based approach. When it comes to observability, that's where this approach lacks the strength, because when you're talking about looking into your pipeline observability, you really want to know that how many pipeline has been successful, how many pipeline has failed. Can I look into a pipeline to see at what stage it is executing? It is right now transforming the cleansing part, or transforming the harmonization or curated part, or still so what stage of the pipeline is running? Those kind of observability is very hard to, because things are like decoupled. Like you have glue jobs, you have lambda functions, they are running based on certain events trigger, but you don't have any end-to-end view about the pipeline. And that is, I will say, the weakness, where the reusability is the strength of this approach, but observability is the weakness of this approach. Because if you want to build a pipeline-wise observability, you need to build a custom observability platform where you are getting all the logs from Lambda to glue job to CloudWatch log, everything you are aggregating, and then you're trying to create a view about your pipeline, end-to-end pipeline execution health. So you can create observability, but you have to custom build the whole observability on your own, which is quite an effort, both in terms of design and also from development point of view. Moving on to the next topic, which is development effort. So development effort, once you should know that there is no early win here, because you have to create a framework which is reusable. You don't want to do this like this kind of event-based trigger pipeline by pipeline, because that will be too much effort. You really want to create a reusable framework, observability on top of that, and then you can start using this platform for onboarding any of the pipelines. So there is no early win here. there's a high upfront development effort for creating the generic framework, reusable framework, observability. But once you have built that framework, then it's a low to medium size effort for onboarding new pipelines. Because when you are building a new pipeline, you need to create certain glue jobs, certain crawlers, and then you simply put their configuration into your DynamoDB table where you're maintaining your metadata for your pipeline. And then, your pipeline is up and running. And this whole reusable framework and observability is taking care of your execution and monitoring end to end. So lot of upfront development effort, but long and midterm, of course, your pipeline maintenance and new pipeline or onboarding is low to medium kind of effort. Now, integration with other AWS services is also possible. You can do either event-based integration because the whole system is based on the event. So you can, of course, use the event-based integration. Or you can also extend the code of Lambda function or glue job to do this kind of AWS integration. So generally, people don't try to hard code thing into Lambda function or glue job, but since the whole mechanism is working based on the event, people simply used event-based integration with other AWS services. If, for instance, they want to build a functionality where when the data is ready into curated state and you want to send a notification to the end users, that kind of integration, which will require integration with probably, I don't know, SNS and email services and those kind of things, you can do event-based integration there. From the development environment point of view, you can use any of the development environment. So for instance, you can use Cloud9, AWS Cloud9 or PyCharm or Visual Studio Code is as good as writing your Lambda function and glue job. So nothing very specific here. You can use any of your existing development environment or tools to build this platform. So this is how your approach 1 is assessed against these 5 points, review points. Now move on to approach number 2, which is using Glue workflow. And this is very straightforward. You can see here I have put a sample pipeline here, just matching to what I was showing in our example pipeline. Here I'm starting the workflow, my raw ETL job is running, then starting the raw crawler, then my raw crawler is running, and then I'm starting my cleansed ETL job, and so on and so forth. So you can use AWS Glue workflow to create this kind of workflow. And again, it uses the same crawlers and glue jobs to create the end-to-end pipeline in a very visual and configurable manner. And of course, this is another methods people use or another approach people use when building the pipeline. And I do have, in fact, another video tutorial where I talk about how to build such pipeline into Glue workflow. So look for Glue workflow in my channel, search for that if you want to learn about how to create and run Glue workflow, and you will find a video with a description over there. Anyway, so if I'm using a Glue workflow to create such a pipeline or such pipelines, then how does my review, how do my review point, how is the assessment of the review points? So let's go back to those 5 points again in the context of considering that you're using Glue workflow to build your pipeline. Coming from the reusability point of view. So here, there is no generic framework. Basically, when you are building a pipeline, you are building a pipeline end to end. So your development is pipeline-wise pipeline. Your development is pipeline by pipeline. So you build one pipeline, second pipeline, third pipeline, fourth pipeline, so on and so forth. So you're literally building a pipeline, a workflow, end to end. So like I showed you the example here, you will create your glue jobs and crawlers, and you simply create this whole flow pipeline by pipeline. So your development is pipeline by pipeline. So reusability is not much there. However, you can create reusability as a job label. So people can go and create some glue job which can be reusable. So let me give you an example. So for instance, I have seen that if some people are like writing a glue job which reads data from, say, a JDBC endpoint and writes to the S3 bucket, they can make this whole table name and those kind of things, S3 location, parameterized in that glue job, so that a same glue job they can use to extract data from different tables and write to different S3 location. So you don't need to write one glue job per table and per S3 location. You can really make a parameterized glue job, a single reusable glue job, which can then be configured to fetch data from different tables in your JDBC endpoint and write to different S3 bucket. So that kind of reusable or generic development you can do at the glue job level. But post that, when it comes to building the pipeline, you are doing development pipeline by pipeline. So it is not that much. So pipelines are not that reusable. One pipeline simply completes one flow end to end. So it is not as strong. This point, the reusability point is not that strong as it was in the approach 1. However, the observability is, because since you're using Glue workflow, it has a built-in and out-of-box visibility. And you can really track your pipeline execution end to end. You can really see which pipelines are running, and if you dig into a particular pipeline, you can really see what stages or steps are complete, what are remaining, if some error came, on which step the error came, what was the error. So you can really have a great visibility in terms of health of your pipeline, because the information because the observability is built, your pipeline execution is tracked end to end. So yeah, this approach has strong point from the observability point of view. Now, development wise, if you see, this approach gives you an early win, because you have not to do a kind of large upfront effort to create a reusable framework and observability platform before you can start writing the pipeline. There's nothing like that. You simply create your glue job, your crawlers, and start writing your pipeline after pipeline. So it can really give you early win. Probably in a day or two, you can start showing back to your organization, hey, look, that Oracle database table is now coming to the S3 bucket, just as an example. Okay, so it really gives you an early win. And it also needs a consistent development effort, because since your development is pipeline by pipeline, so approach is pretty straightforward. You build your glue job and your crawler and you develop the pipeline. That's how it happens. And if you have some reusable glue job, simply reuse that glue job. But end of day, all you're doing is building pipeline by pipeline into your glue workflow. So your development effort is consistent throughout. I can't say it's high, medium, or low, because that depends on the complexity of the workflow, how complex the ETL thing is. But yeah, I mean, all I can say is that it's a consistent development effort throughout in this approach. Now, integration with other AWS services is possible, but that's where it gets little complex, because in Glue workflow, you can integrate only Glue job and Glue crawler. There is no other AWS service you can integrate there. So suppose you want to send a notification or you want to publish to a topic in SNS, which can send a notification about your curated data ready for your end users. That code you have to write into the Glue job. So really you have to use suppose if you're using Python, then you have to use your Boto3 SDK to write those 4, 5, 6 lines of code into your Glue job to send such notification. Now, Glue job does provide certain ways to create some external libraries which you can refer and then use. Yeah, Glue job does has certain level of reusability support, where all these codes, all these sending notification through SNS. This code you don't need to write your Glue job by Glue job. You can put your your functionality code into some kind of reusable library, and that reusable library you can integrate with your Glue job, and then you can simply call the method over there to send a notification. Yeah, so you can create certain reusability, but but what I want to emphasize here is that you have to build that kind of reusable library, plus this code integration will be inside your Glue job into your code. So there's no event here, there's no step in the workflow where you can integrate your AWS service. The other AWS service call has been integrated into your Glue job code. Okay. So that's why it is little complex, not much, but little complex. Now, from the development environment point of view, you can use Glue Workflow Designer. Again, it's not one of the best designer tool, let's say that way, but it works, and it is not complex either. Okay, it's not complex, but it's not very intuitive. So you have to learn a bit, and then after that, it works fantastic. So, but you can use Glue Workflow Designer to build such pipelines. That's how your review points look like from the Glue Workflow point of view. Now, the third approach which people can take, which is very similar to the previous approach of Glue Workflow, but you're using step functions. You're using step functions to actually create the similar kind of workflow. Yeah, so again, you're creating a workflow, but not inside a Glue crawler, but you're writing that workflow inside step functions. And and in step function, you can now, in fact, use step function workflow designer, a new service which has been launched, not service, I'll say, as a new feature within step functions, which has been launched, and you can use that feature to actually visually design your workflow. So again, it's similar to Glue Workflow, but only thing you are creating a workflow inside step functions, not in the Glue Workflow. So let's see how the review points look like when we try to build a similar kind of pipeline into using AWS step functions. Okay, so let's talk about reusability first. It's very much similar to the previous approach. Again, it's a pipeline by pipeline wise development. So I'm not going to spend time on reusability because it's similar to your Glue Workflow, pipeline by pipeline development, and you can create reusable Glue jobs and you can reuse it, but nothing much you can do from reusability beyond these points. Observability point, again, is similar to Glue Workflow. It has got built-in and out-of-box visibility, and really you can track your pipeline's progress end to end, and you can look into how many pipelines running. You can look into a particular pipeline and you can see what steps are completed, what pending, and those kind of things. So again, similar to approach number 2. So this is approach 3, by the way. So it looks like there's a typo here. Yeah, it's approach 3, but similar to approach 2. Moving on to development effort, again, it can give you early wins. It can really give you early wins, same as Glue Workflow. However, keep one thing in mind. If you come back over here, I want to show you something. You see here, there is a way to start the Glue job, but there is no way to start a Lambda. There is no way to start a crawler. So there is no out-of-box action to start a crawler. There is action to start a Glue job, but there is no action to start a crawler. So you have to write this kind of Lambda function, which will start where you write the code to start the crawler. Now you can make this Lambda function, of course, reusable. I'm not denying that, but end of day, there is no direct support to start the crawler, at least at this point of time. So you have to use a Lambda function to start the crawler. So coming back to my assessment again, so development wise, it can give you early win, but it becomes a little irritating when you try to run crawlers, because there is no direct support to start the crawler. And plus, since there is no direct support to start the crawler, and crawler is kind of asynchronous start. Like for instance, you start the crawler and then crawler might take some time to finish. So you have to really start the crawler and then write some kind of business logic in some other Lambda functions to check the status of the crawler, and do not move forward in the step function unless my crawler has finished the job. A task, right? So those kind of things you have to build a bit. Again, you can create some kind of reusable code over there, but you have to look into those aspects. So development wise, it is little irritating because of not support for crawler execution from the step functions. But yeah, there is a workaround using Lambda function. Again, it's a consistent development effort throughout, because again, same thing, you are building pipeline by pipeline. So whatever effort it takes to build a pipeline, depend on the pipeline complexity, that effort you have to put. Integration with AWS services is possible here as well. And here, this approach wins a bit because it provides direct integration with other AWS services. So for instance, if you want to call you want to publish data to SNS topic for some kind of notification for curated data being ready, going by the same example, it provides direct integration. You don't need to write any custom code, anything for that purpose. So that part is the strength of this approach, where you can actually provide integration with other AWS services. Now, development effort wise, as I mentioned earlier, that step functions recently provide workflow designer, and you can use workflow designer to build and drag and drop way your pipeline. And of course, the whole pipeline can also be configured using JSON, and you can also create a JSON document to create this workflow. But yeah, up to you whether you want to use JSON or you want to use this new workflow designer tool. So these are how the review assessment look like when trying to build this kind of pipeline using step function. And I'm sorry for a typo here. This should be approach 3, not approach 2. So having discussed all three approaches, let's try to put things into conclusion, into one page, to understand and to compare all 5 aspects in a summarized way. So first thing is reusability. So reusability wise, event-based provides biggest reusability, because literally your development effort is creating a glue job and crawler, and that glue job can also be a reusable glue job. And then you put your metadata configuration into your metadata store, say DynamoDB, and then your pipeline will start running. So it's really very reusable. Glue and step function also provide reusability, but it's a pipeline by pipeline development. So you can create reusable glue jobs, but end of day, in order to run the pipeline, you have to create the whole pipeline end to end. And this development is again pipeline by pipeline. So from reusability point of view, event-based approach has a strength. However, glue and step function both have same kind of strength. From observability point of view, event-based observability is, I'm giving you 1 star. And reason being is that you can build observability, but you have to do a lot of work to build on observability. You have to really, because I'm not saying that I'm interested to know that this glue job run or that crawler run or not. You are interested to see if I'm running 100 pipelines, how many such pipelines are running at this point of time, how many has finished, how long to take to finish, and if something is running, then at what step the execution is, and if something failed, what was the error when it failed. That kind of observability, building that kind of framework for observability is a lot of effort. So event-based observability is, I'm giving 1 star, not because observability cannot be built. You can build such an observability, but you have to put a lot of effort to build such an observability. However, in glue and step function, glue workflow and step function, that kind of observability is out of box, built in. You can really track pipeline by pipeline execution out of box. So Glue workflow and step function both have strength from observability point of view. Now, from development effort point of view, all three are more or less the same. If I want to say, for instance, your event-based development effort is more because you are providing kind of lot of upfront development, and then you have to do glue job and crawlers for the latter part of the development when you are building new pipelines. In case of glue workflow and step function, you also create, there's no upfront development here, but for all the pipelines, you have to anyway create the glue job and crawlers, and then you have to do the configuration of putting them together in like a workflow. So overall, you will find that your event-based mechanism has little more development effort compared to glue and step function. But glue and step functions have got almost same type of development effort. Though in step function, you have to take a little pain of using lambda functions to start the crawler and then tracking the crawler status. But if you think from that point of view, in glue workflow, if you want to integrate with other AWS services, you have to create a reusable framework, reusable library, and then call that into the glue job. So that's why I'm saying that, yeah, I mean, little pros and cons, but development effort wise, glue workflow step functions almost the same effort. Event based effort is little more because of the lot of upfront development you have to do for building a reusable framework and observability, especially the observability part. Observability is the complex part in the development. Integration with other AWS services in event-based, best is step function, of course, because out of box you can simply add a step into your workflow to integrate with other AWS services. It is least in it is the weakest. So step function has strongest point from integration with AWS services point of view, but glue workflow is the weakest because here you have to create a reusable library and then you have to write code inside your glue job for such integration, which somehow not a very favorite approach of mine. And event-based is somewhere in between, because since the whole mechanism is working based on the event, so you can use those events to integrate with other AWS services as well. So it's somewhere in between. So so again here, the step function wins as long as integration with AWS services is concerned. Then comes your event-based and finally glue workflow. And finally, from development environment point of view, or development environment or development tools point of view, all three are good actually, because event-based you can use your PyCharm, Visual Code, or Cloud9, any of those development environment for development. For glue workflow, you have Glue Workflow Designer. For step function, you have step function designer. So all three are fair to each other when it comes to development environment. And that's pretty much where I conclude myself, comparing the three methods and their strength and weaknesses. So depending on how you want to build your data platform, what different use cases you have, how you want to build your workflow, you can use, hopefully you can use this comparison and this discussion I did to decide which approach most suit you, and you choose the right way of developing the pipeline. So that's all for today, guys. If you like this video, please click on the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you have any feedback, any comments, or any request for new content, you can you can provide your feedback in the comment section. I always look forward to your feedback for improving my content and my delivery. So I look forward to hearing from you. I promise to come back again in a week's time with another such tutorial. In the meantime, stay safe and have a nice day. Bye-bye.